All right, everyone, let's do this. We're tackling a big one today. That feeling you get, when you hit your 30s and you're like, wait a minute, is this it? Is this what I'm doing with my life?
Yeah.
We've all been there, right? And we're really excited to be diving into this with Finding Purpose in Life in Your 30s, a friendly guide. Hopefully, by the end of this, we'll all have a better idea of how to make this decade awesome.
Yeah, and I like how you called it a guide, not like a rule book, Because that's what it feels like sometimes. You hit 30 and suddenly everyone's got an opinion about what you should be doing.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
I remember when turning 30 seemed like ancient. And now it's like, wait, I'm supposed to be a grown-up who understands mortgages.
Huh.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. And the thing is, even those expectations are changing. Remember how everyone jokes about those quarter life crises? Well, they're happening a bit later now, like the average first-time home buyer, 32. So yeah, no wonder it feels like the pressure's on.
Okay, so we're feeling the pressure, maybe having a mini freak-out moment. Is it even possible to have a midlife crisis in your 30s? Or is that like not alive until you're older?
Well, I think it's less about the cliche midlife crisis and more about what's driving it. That gap between what we thought our lives would look like at this point and, well, reality. That's where it gets interesting. We're handed these ideas of what success looks like. But what if those ideas don't actually line up with what we value?
And those expectations can be so different for everyone. Like the article talks about how men and women often feel this pressure in totally different ways.
Totally. You've got societal expectations around careers, around family.
Yeah.
I mean, for men, there might be this pressure to hit certain milestones in their career by a certain age, be financially set. And then women are often dealing with these expectations around starting families, while maybe their career goals are also evolving at the same time. It's a lot to balance.
Okay, so we're feeling pressure, maybe questioning a few things.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to spiral, right? So how do we go from feeling lost to feeling like we actually have a purpose, like we're on the right track?
I think that's where the whole self-discovery thing comes in. And I don't mean jet setting off to find yourself, although, hey, if that's your thing. But really, it's about figuring out what your core values are, what actually matters to you. Once you've got that foundation, you can start making choices that line up with those values.
Okay, I like where this is going. So instead of chasing after some random definition of success, it's about figuring out what success actually means for you. Makes sense to me.
Exactly. And when you're living in a way that lines up with your values, everything just feels a little better. Work is more fulfilling. Your relationships feel more authentic. Even your everyday choices just, make more sense.
Okay, that sounds incredible. But how do we actually make that happen? How do we put this into action? It's easy to say, oh yeah, I value adventure or whatever, but then what? How do you actually make that part of your life?
Totally. So the article talks about this cool tool. It's like a goal table. So imagine dividing a piece of paper into different parts of your life: career, relationships, personal growth, all that.
Okay, I like it already.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a visual person, so this is speaking my language.
Right. And then you just brainstorm what you want to achieve in each of those areas. It's kind of like a vision board, but for your whole life.
Okay, roadmap, vision board, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But what happens when one of those areas is feeling like really off? Let's talk about careers, because a lot of us hit our 30s and it's like that whole, what do I want to be when I grow up? Question comes back with a vengeance.
Oh, big time. It's so normal. In fact, the article mentions that I think it was a large percentage of people in the UK said they weren't happy with their jobs. So if you're in that boat, you are definitely not alone.
Well, that makes me feel a tiny bit better, I guess. Misery loves company. But knowing others are struggling doesn't magically make your situation better. So how do you know if it's just a temporary thing, like you just need a vacation or something, or if it's actually a sign that it's time for a career change?
That's where the article's advice is super useful. It points out some red flags to watch out for. Feeling bored at work all the time, not feeling challenged, or you don't see any room to grow in your current job. Those are all signs that maybe your job just isn't letting you reach your full potential.
And, sometimes it's not even about the job itself, right? Sometimes it's that we change. Like, what we want out of our careers now is different from what we wanted 5-10 years ago.
Right.
Which is totally fine, by the way.
Exactly. And realizing that, that's a big deal. But then comes the really scary part, right? Okay, I want to change careers. Now what?
Yeah, because it's easy to say that, but actually doing it, that's a whole other thing.
For sure. But the article does a good job of breaking it down. It talks about the importance of doing your research. So let's say you're, stuck in a marketing job that you kind of hate, but you're obsessed with, like user experience design. The article would say, okay, Dive into that world. Figure out what skills you need, what different UX career paths are out there. Maybe you could even use your marketing skills to become a UX writer or a content strategist or something. It's all about finding those connections.
I love that. So it's about finding those threads that could lead you somewhere new. But what about actually making those connections in real life? Like everyone always says, network, 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 but that can feel so awkward.
I know, but networking doesn't have to be so scary. Think of it less about like awkwardly trying to impress people with your business card and more about just like connecting with people who are doing interesting stuff. The article actually gives this example of a guy who took a 6-week TV writing course. And it wasn't just about learning the skill, it was about meeting other people who are passionate about the same thing. You never know what could come out of those connections.
That is such a good point. Sometimes you just have to take that first step, even if you don't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking those steps, another thing the article talks about is the power of passion projects.
Yes, this is so important because, let's be real, most of us can't just quit our jobs and become full-time artists or whatever, but that doesn't mean our passions have to just disappear.
Right. And honestly, sometimes it's those old passions that we kind of forgot about that start to feel super important again in our 30s. Like we need to reclaim those parts of ourselves that we maybe pushed aside.
Absolutely. And even those small creative outlets can make a huge difference. Remember what the article said about there being a link between doing things you love and just like feeling better overall?
Yes. I loved that part. It's like when you're feeling totally burnt out, even just doing something you enjoy for a few minutes can completely change your whole outlook.
Totally. It reminds you that life isn't all about work and stress. It's about finding those things that bring you joy. Like I recently started knitting again.
How fun.
I know, right? It's been years, but it's been amazing. Such a great way to just de-stress and use a different part of my brain.
I love that. Okay, speaking of self-care, the article also talks about this idea of lifestyle design. And at first I was like, okay, is this just the fancy way of saying get it together? But it's actually way more than that. It's more like instead of just letting life happen to you, you're like, nope, I'm taking the wheel.
Yeah.
You're making choices that actually build the life you want, not just the life you end up with by accident.
Yes, exactly. It's really about taking a step back and being like, okay, what does a truly fulfilling life look like for me? Not for like my parents or Instagram, but for me. And then how can I design my life, like literally my days, my weeks, to actually make that happen?
So it's less about some picture-perfect routine that everyone's supposed to follow and more about being intentional, like making a conscious effort to prioritize what really matters to you.
Right, like actually choosing those things and then letting go of the stuff that's just dragging you down. And the article talks about some really practical things you can do, like incorporating healthy habits into your routine, like regular exercise. And I know everyone always says it, but prioritize sleep.
Dude, yes. Adulting is hard enough as it is. Trying to do it on no sleep, forget it.
Right, it's just not sustainable. And then the article also mentioned mindfulness, which I know everyone's talking about mindfulness these days, but seriously, even 5 minutes of meditation can make a huge difference in how you feel.
Oh, absolutely. Like those guided meditation apps, game changers. The article mentioned Headspace and Calm. Those are my go-tos.
Yeah, those are great, especially when you're just starting out.
For sure, because we're not all like Zen masters overnight,
Yeah, definitely not. And that's the thing, right? It's all these little things that add up over time.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about careers, we've talked about passions, lifestyle, but I feel like there's this one piece missing from the puzzle. And the article touches on this too. It's the people, the friends, family, mentors. Those relationships are so crucial.
So true, especially in your 30s, like figuring out who you are, what you want. Having that solid support system makes all the difference. And speaking of support systems, the article talks a lot about the value of finding a mentor.
Yes. Okay, tell me more about that, because I feel like mentorship can sound kind of intimidating.
Yeah, right. Like you need to find some big shot CEO to take you under their wing. But it really doesn't have to be like that at all. It's more about connecting with someone who inspires you, who has experience in an area that you're interested in, and who like genuinely wants to help you succeed.
I love that. And it doesn't even have to be someone in your specific field, right? Just someone who you can learn from, who challenges you to grow. I thought it was really cool that the article gave that example of the CEO who found a mentor in someone younger than him.
I know. It's such a good example. It challenges that whole idea that mentors always have to be older and more experienced. Sometimes the best mentorships are the ones where you're both learning and growing together.
I love that. It's about being open to those connections, wherever they might come from.
Totally. It's a two-way street. And as we're like wrapping up this deep dive, I think that's what really sticks with me, that finding your purpose, it's not like this finish line you cross. It's a journey.
It really is, with lots of twists and turns along the way.
Exactly. And it's okay to feel a little lost sometimes. It's okay to question things, to change your mind. That's all part of it.
It really is. And on that note, as you're navigating this wild ride we call our 30s, just remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. Just focus on taking one small step at a time. Even if it's something tiny, any step in the right direction can make a world of difference. And hey, we're cheering you on every step of the way.